The walrus. Amazing animal, isn't it? As a matter of fact, just like the polar bear, it's a typical icon for the Arctic. However, only a handful of people have seen them in the wild. It's a fantastic animal, and it belongs to a group of animals, or more correctly, an order of animals called Pinnipedia. Pinnipedia is the scientific name, and it means literally the fin-footed or feather-footed, and refers to the way there's only one species of walruses. However, it is divided into two subpopulations, or two races, so to speak, the Pacific race and the Atlantic race. Also, walrus, just like a sea lion, can tuck its pelvis forward and scratch themselves behind the head, just like a dog. This would be impossible for a true seal. He's fully adult, but yeah. It's just that some of them have bigger tusks than the others, yeah. But he's not as old as the other one. The number 2 from the right is older. And you can tell partially because of the size of the tusk, but also from the skin. You can see they have a quite wide muzzle, and the females, they have a more narrow, they have a smaller and prettier face. I counted some 16 from the water. It's always difficult to tell because you don't know where one starts and when the other one. That's quite interesting to see how agile he is. As when he stretches out, he's got pretty long arms, and he can move it about. That's something that it's a feature that they share with sea lions. Whereas the other seals we have seen so far, like the bearded seal, they have much shorter flippers and they can sort of scratch themselves a little bit. But walruses have an anatomy which is more similar to sea lions. But of course, the most prominent features of the walrus is no doubt the tusks. Both sexes have the tusks. However, the males grow slightly larger and thicker, and they're not used for digging for food. We're not entirely sure what they're used for. Obviously, they're great weapons, and they grow quite big. On a male, they can grow as much as 1 meter in length, and when they're 1 meter long, they weigh almost 10 kilos a piece. They're massive ivory. These are the teeth, the canine teeth, which are elongated. They're not hollow in the inside or anything. They use them to fight with each other. We saw a little bit of fighting today. As the mating starts in the middle of the winter, they fight more fiercely, more aggressively, and occasionally they break them off. They will not get a new set. Okay, they don't lose them and get a new set. What happens is that walrus has to live with a broken tusk. It will grow continuously throughout life, so you can judge the age by watching how big the tusks are. But they will grow to a certain age. But of course, they can fight any enemies as well. So if a dangerous animal would show up there, like a polar bear, they would definitely fend it off. And a polar bear would never dream of attacking a large, fully grown adult walrus. And the longest tusks is the winner. The bigger the better. That means that you will be at the top of the hierarchy, whatever it means, if it's mating, getting females, or getting the best spot in the group, like in the middle of everybody where the warmest spot is. That's the biggest tusks is actually where you get the winner. Scars that we see on the walrus are from other walruses. That's okay if you're a walrus because they have this incredibly thick skin, about 5 centimeters thick, especially around the neck region, and especially on the males. We saw one today, especially, was very sort of warty and beautiful. They spend most of the time in the water. Of course, they're marine mammals indeed. They find their food on the ocean floor. So how do they stay warm? The water here is hovering around 0, sometimes below, but they're insulated by blubber. We saw them quite close and we realized that they don't have much of a fur. They do have some hair, But as they grow older, they also lose the hair, just like us. Big walrus weighs about 1,500 kilos. That's a male. The females, they grow to about 900 kilos, so they're not that big. And in rare occasions, you can also have walruses that are heavier than that, close to 2,000 kilos, the really big ones. And that's a body weight they gain from a healthy diet of mussels and clam. They can eat as much as 70 kilos in one foraging trip. If they go out to feed, they go out for a couple of days, and they can feed about 70-80 kilos of mussels in particular. They're not using the tusks to dig for the mussels. They're not using them at all when they're feeding. Instead, they're using these highly sensitive whiskers to find the food. They need these. They're just like underwater pigs. They're just shuffling the mud around, trying to find something. So they find the mussels and they suck them up, manage to suck out the contents, the good part, the soft parts, and then they spit out the shell, and that's what's left. They don't eat the shells at all. The walrus, yes, it has been hunted, and yes, by us, the Europeans, and yes, to the brink of extinction. Yes, we're pretty good doing that. It was already from the beginning hunted by the natives, but they never took more than they needed. And that was a quite sustainable hunt. But already in the old days, walrus tusks were well-known, sought for, and had a high price. And once the whalers came up, going for the whales, they also realized very soon that, hey, we can boil the walrus blubber as well. And there's a lot of blubber on the walrus, so why not use that as well? And then we also cut the ivory off. So the first walruses were hunted very rapidly till they almost completely disappeared. And also later on, when the industry was picking up in Europe, the industry realized that the leather was very good when you were constructing belts for heavy duty work and heavy duty machinery, because the leather was so thick and tough. So yet another reason to kill them. And that led to an almost extinction here in Svalbard in 1950s. So in 1952 there were hardly any animals left in Svalbard, but then in the early 80s they started to come back, and since then they have slowly increased in numbers. And the last few years we have seen more and more walruses, but particularly female with cubs, which is great news, because that means that they probably started to reproduce in the area as well.